Call to order this regular Board of Directors meeting for December 7th, 2021. Roll call.
Sappington.
Here.
Smiley.
Here.
Burns.
Here.
Hunt.
Here.
Rissler.
Here.
Allen.
Here.
Carroll.
If you all will, please rise as we have our prayer, and Director Smiley will lead that for us, and then please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the many blessings that you have given our community and for the opportunity to come together and serve our citizens. We ask you to guide and direct us tonight in the decisions that we are about to make. Please watch over our community, our nation, and those that serve and protect us wherever they may be. In Jesus' name, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to ask that anyone that has an electronic device, please silence that or turn it off so that we don't have any interruptions during the meeting, and I appreciate that. Next is time for our public input. At this time, I would ask that the public may address the Board of Directors on any city business that is not listed on our regular agenda. Is there anyone that would like to address the board on something that's not on our regular agenda? If not, then I would ask that, is there anyone that would like to address the Board of Directors regarding any item on our consent agenda? If there is not, then we will move on to our consent agenda. Item A, workshop minutes, November 16th, 2021. B, regular meeting minutes, November 16th, 2021. C, appointment Planning and Zoning Commission and Board of Adjustment, Katie Rennard and Kevin Williams. D, appointments Parks Advisory Board, Manny and Anchondo, Michael Henry and Holly Wiles. E, agreement Chief Elected Officials, Workforce Services Development District. F, contract Reservoir Pumphouse Upgrade, Public Works Department, Water Division, JCI Industries Incorporated, $127,626. G, consent in lieu of annual meeting of the Illinois River Water Resource Company. H, Resolution 62-21, Significant Development Permit, 3000 Sherry Whitlock Drive, Springs Church of Christ. I, Resolution 6321, Special Use Development Permit, 300 block of North Simon Sager Avenue, Tillman Communications Tower. J, Resolution 64-21, Grant Acceptance, Northwest Arkansas Regional Planning Commission, TAP Grant, North Mount Olive Side Path, $376,000. K, contract Healthcare Reinsurance, International Assurance of Tennessee. Directors, is there any item that you would like to have removed from our consent agenda?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
letter I.
Anyone else? Yes.
I move that we approve the consent agenda minus item I.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Smiley.
Yes.
Burns.
Yes.
Hunt. Rissler.
Yes.
Allen.
Yes.
Sappington.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Director Allen, item I, Resolution 63-21.
I've just got to abstain is why I couldn't.
Okay.
I didn't want that in the group.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So do I have a motion to approve item I, Resolution 63-21?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. I believe it was Smiley and Sappington. Roll call.
Burns.
Yes.
Hunt.
Yes.
Rissler,
Yes.
Allen,
Abstain.
Sappington,
Yes.
Smiley.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Next is our regularly scheduled items, starting with resolutions. Resolution 65-21, Significant Development Permit 190 Arkansas Highway 59 Jiffy Trip. Ben?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the board. Ben Rhodes, Senior Planner. If I can get the PowerPoint up. Oh, good. So yes, before you is a significant development permit. This is occurring at 190 Highway 59, and the request before you is to build a 6,700 square foot auto service station, which will include a rear drive-through food service for the customers. This project was also tabled at the Planning Commission due to some questions over the driveways proposed and the ensuing RDOT approval. The proposal before you has those driveways worked out and resolved at this time. Here I'm showing you what the original site plan presented with the project, with the driveways that were requested, particularly on the east side of Highway 59. You see originally there were two driveways here and then a driveway down on there. Again, this is the original site plan. They did come back with a revised version. So this is the version that is before you for approval, where we have a single driveway coming out here on Highway 59 that will be a shared driveway between the proposed use, which is the gas station, and a future use for the lot to the north, which is vacant. Then there's also an additional driveway shown here on the far western extremity of the property near the proposed detention basin. And then what we're also showing here is just for understanding of how this all flows together. As you know, the Atwoods project is currently under construction, and so we're showing that up on the top right. And there is a interconnecting driveway that will allow customers that would get some fuel, can go up to Atwoods to go shopping or vice versa without having to pull out onto Highway 59 because they will be interconnected. Here is just the property zoomed in a little bit closer so you can see what is going on. We do have a fueling canopy out on the front, and then the main facility in the middle there with a drive-through back behind. And then here is the site plan just shown in the overall environment laid onto an aerial. And then with the landscaping, one thing to note with this is that there is a proposed lot consolidation. This sits on several lots, and so the future lot will be drawn out here where I'm doing that red drawing there. And so the landscaping is following along those future lot lines. So that's why we have the trees sort of inset on the property there. And of course, these are the darker areas are the islands, and then green space out in front. Here you see some of the elevations of what the facility will look like. And finally, the site with the drainage being on the far left and the main facility being primarily right in the middle there. The Planning Commission staff are recommending approval with one needed condition, and this is related on the lot consolidation permit that I mentioned earlier. This is needed, as I said, because the project sits on several lots, and so they will be adjusting the lot lines based off of the approval. There is also need for several cross-access easements based on the driveway layout and the proposed lot configurations. And all of these will be needed prior to building permit issuance. And with that, we stand ready for any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to make a comment on Resolution 65-21? Yes, sir. Please come to the podium. Give us your name, address, and then you will have 3 minutes.
My name's Don Rose. My address is 1710 West Willow in Enid, Oklahoma. I'm only here, I represent Jiffy Trip. Worked with Ben and had great correspondence to get this done. I look forward to having a business here in Siloam. Just here if you have any questions or concerns about what we're doing.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Directors?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Marla.
I just have a couple of real quick questions. Who's going to be responsible, Ben, for building the road? The cost of the road that's going to connect them?
For building the road.
The cost for the road that's going to connect Atwoods?
Oh, yes, yes. Well, that would be all part of this development project. It would be Jiffy Trip. That would be, yeah,
Brookfield?
yeah.
And the vacant lot that's between, is it owned by either one of the entities?
I believe it is owned by the entity that's controlling Jiffy Trip.
Okay.
Yep.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
thank you for coming, Mr. Rhodes, to be available for questions. We had them. I actually have a question for you, Mr. Rhodes. Can you go back to the photograph?
Oh, okay.
And
This one?
right, right.
Yeah.
Can you show me there on that photograph, because I can't see the others as well, approximately where that driveway is going to be? Is it going to be even west of that building there? That building, I'm assuming, will be coming down, or where approximately will the driveway coming out onto 412B? On
I
that
believe, and it ends up, let me just go back to the site plan just to check real quick. Okay. I believe it will be somewhere in this vicinity, roughly. So they're pushing it as far west as possible, but to try to get it out of this critical turn movement,
Right.
so that they're not having conflicts at that turn from 59 to Highway 412.
Okay, that's what I was wanting to see. It was just a little hard for me to gauge, but that helps me gauge. Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Brad.
Hey, Ben, do we have to run anything by RDOT?
Yes, RDOT's been involved with this, and they have approved, to my knowledge, the driveway placement.
Anyone else? If not, do I have a motion to approve Resolution 65-21, Significant Development Permit?
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Hunt,
Yes.
Rissler,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Sappington,
Yes.
Smiley,
Yes.
Burns.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Next is Resolution 66-21, Adopt 2022 Budget. Christina?
Mayor, members of the board, Christina Patricis, Finance Director. Staff presented the proposed budget over the past several workshops. The budget as presented meets the requirements for a legal budget and will bring in approximately $2 million from operations across all funds. Staff is available for questions.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, David.
Christina, the memo we have from you says that capital outlay for proposed projects from restricted funds and reserves exceeds $13.5 million. But yet the workshop slide that was presented to us only totaled $7.1 million. And I was wondering, where's the other $6.4 million for capital projects?
If you'll give me just a minute, I'll pull up where I got those numbers from. Well, everything for streets is restricted, but hold on.
But the workshop slide you gave us significant capital projects.
Yes, significant capital projects did not include all capital projects, just
Why would it not?
because we have a large number of capital projects. Hold on.
I believe you should be providing the board with a list of all capital projects that are going to be spending money out of funds for you to give us one number here that only lists some of those projects and give us a total number that is off by 6.4 million in your report. I can't support this budget when we're not given it all the information. The other thing that I have a question on, the step plan that the police has approved, I understood was explained in the budget, but I don't find it in the budget. Is there some description of the step compensation plan in the budget? Now, don't get me wrong, I'm all glad that we are doing a different change on paying our police because we've been a revolving door for years. But since we are about to approve the compensation plan, I would have thought the changed step plan would have been brought to our board attention as well. But if it's in this budget, I can't find it. Is it supposed to be in there?
The cost is included in the budget. We gave you a brief description of the plan, but the details of the plan are in the compensation plan.
The details of the
As
step
in,
plan?
okay, so, hold on just a second. My understanding is that the compensation plan raises, I'll just give you a brief summary, but it raises the minimum pay for police officers to $18.50. And then each year they get a step increase until they're promoted, and then each wage band is included in the compensation plan.
Okay.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Brad.
are we going to have public input or give the public a chance before we speak?
Yes, we will do that at this time. Is there anyone in the public, in our audience, that would like to have an input on Resolution 6621, which is our budget? Thank you, if there is not, and Christina. And do I have anyone else on the board that would like to comments or questions? And David, were you come through with
No,
what?
I wasn't.
Okay.
I had a question for Mr. Patterson.
Okay.
Does voting for this budget inherently give our approval to fund the East Main project that is funded between $6 and $10 million?
There's no money in this budget for the East Main project other than the cost of doing the final engineering, but the project itself is not funded in this budget.
It's not part of the street department budget
No, sir.
or any other fund?
No, sir.
Can you explain the difference between the 13.5 million and the 7.1 million? I mean, that's nearly 50% of the proposed capital projects.
Director Allen, the explanation would be that when we presented the original budget workshop and we went over the highlights of the budget, that's what Christina was saying, I forget the term she used, but the major capital projects. And then when we went page by page by page, we went through those, and all of those capital projects are listed on those individual pages. Again, we didn't go through every line item in every budget, but we went through those highlights on every page within the budget. So the goal is to try to make sure that we want you to see the bigger projects, but also to give you that opportunity to look at each page in the individual department's budget to see those capital projects that are in that budget.
Understood. But do you see my problem in that your memo states $13.5 million for capital improvement projects? That is not the figure in the budget workshop page, which is nearly half of the number you're giving us.
I understand your concern.
It's not a concern, it's a matter of not giving us the full information on a board workshop slide that then we're told a number that is much higher. Yes, I understand each department has individual capital improvement projects, but I don't quite get why we wouldn't have been given the full picture.
Director Allen, we'll be happy to change that process going forward.
I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Mindy.
I wanted to take this opportunity, and Director Allen sort of alluded to this, that, well, to ask and to confirm my understanding that adopting the budget does not inherently mean that we are approving any expenditure, that these capital projects and others will still come to us one at a time. At that time, we will vote for or against them, correct?
That would be correct for
Or
anything
Over 50,000.
over Phillips Purchasing
Right,
Authority.
Right,
Correct.
exactly, okay. I understand that the numbers that make up for the difference are in the supplemental pages,
Mhm.
just not in the slide. I'm wondering if it might be helpful to table this vote, since it's out there that there's 6 million missing from this memo. Could we table this to have that information at the next meeting? Is it
Certainly,
possible to
I
have
can
that info-
combine all of those pages and
I-
give you a list, but I can tell you that the major overview was every project over 300,000. The other amounts are everything under 300,000. They're all individual.
Okay.
So
That's a helpful explanation here. I want us to understand as a board what we are voting on for the sake of public perception.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Carol.
we are voting on the numbers in the budget book, correct?
correct.
Itemized,
Yes,
okay, not memos or anything like that.
correct.
The final, okay. That's what I need to know. Thank you.
Mhm.
Anyone else?
Madam Mayor,
Lisa first and then Brad.
Just for clarity,
Mm.
can you tell us, so the audience and everybody knows, what, you said anything that is over Phillips' spending ability, what is that number?
That is currently $54,000.
54,000.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was 50, but 54, okay.
Point of order, I believe it was raised recently to over 100,000? Was it not?
Just for inventory for utilities.
That is a stipulation.
Brad?
oh, I'm trying to be politically correct. So, might be difficult this evening, so I apologize if I offend anybody in the future statements. But there were 4 things out of this budget. Maintain the current tax rate for citizens, invest more in city employees, which is one of our most valued assets, invest more in infrastructure and maintain cities' investment in infrastructure, and maintain fund reserves. That was our 4 objectives for this going into this next year, because we understand that it's competitive out there, and this investment in our city employees is, man, it is so significant for the future services of this city. And as I got the additional paper, and I have to spend my own personal time highlighting, because I'm old school, so I highlight manually. I write little notes down. There's nothing, the transparency's out there. And Christina, I appreciate it. It's difficult to make, 7 human beings happy. There's nothing misleading out there in the public. We pass ballot budgets. These projects will come to us. We'll vote them up or we'll vote them down. And some of us will leave it at the table, and some of us won't leave it here. My statement to the citizens is I voted up or down, and I leave it right here at the table. I respect my other board members' votes. I'm here to do city business, and we have some business to do this evening. And we have a very large budget. And we have great projects coming up, great infrastructure projects coming up. I'm excited about them. I'm excited to compare
the street department to the private sector. And I'm 7 years on the board. That's an ongoing struggle for me to not have our infrastructure and street projects completed on a timely date. And so those are things that I look forward to going in this next year, because as we look out to 23, I think we're going to learn some significant things this year, and collectively as a board, make some decisions that can greatly improve some of our infrastructure projects. So I appreciate your work. I think we're spending the taxpayers' dollars wisely, and I'm excited to move forward with this budget. Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yes. No.
Christine, I do appreciate everything you did. I know there's a lot of work that goes into putting the budget together. I do agree with Director Allen and Director Hunt that it's clarity for the citizens. We're presenting something to the citizens, and we want them to understand exactly what we're voting on. In the sight of any deception, and I'm not saying you don't, I know you're not. What I'm saying is if somebody thinks there's any deception, we need to make it clear so that they can understand it. They don't do this every day. We didn't vote them in to understand what we're looking at. We didn't vote them in to go out to do all the work that we are supposed to do as directors. And I'm not saying anything against you, Christina. I think you do a wonderful job. So I do agree with Director Hunt, and I do agree with Director Allen that clarity would just be helpful for the citizens.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we table this to the next meeting. It is no rush. The next meeting is fine. It's before the end of the year. And with that meeting, we can get a full accounting of all capital projects that total the $13.5 million.
We have a motion to table. Is there a second? Did you second, Lisa?
I'm sorry.
Okay, that's fine. So Lisa seconded that motion to table. So we will take a roll call.
Rissler,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Sappington,
Yes.
Wiley,
Yes.
Burns,
No?
Hunt.
Yes.
Motion to table is approved. This will be on our next agenda for board's consideration. Thank you, Christina.
Christine.
Thank you, Christina.
The next item is Resolution 67-21, Adopt 2022 Compensation Plan. Misty?
Good evening. I believe that this goes in conjunction with the compensation plan, so we'll probably have to table this one too.
And would that also be
No.
true for the employee handbook?
No, well, I think we can do the employee handbook.
I mean, that's the board's pleasure. I think you can adopt the compensation plan subject to approval of the board of
Are you
the
guys okay
budget
with
at
that?
a later
Okay.
date, if that's what the board wishes, or it can be tabled until the budget too, because it's dependent upon the budget, obviously.
Yes. So you want me to just go ahead?
So go ahead.
Okay. All right. So, good evening, Mayor, members of the board, Misty McLaughlin, HR Manager. We are looking at adopting the 2022 compensation plan. We have reviewed and updated the current compensation plan, and we're recommending the following changes. 5% COLA adjustment to all salary ranges except PD per the proposed 2022 budget. PD has implemented a new compensation plan. It's a step plan, increasing the starting pay to $18.50 per hour to be more competitive. Adding Planner 2 in community development, reclassifying mowing lead to recreation technician in parks, adding new service analysis in IT, adding a cataloger marketer in library, adding 2 new lead positions in sanitation. One is a new position and one is a reclassification of the solid waste foreman. Removing the deputy chief position in the police department, it's just not budgeted for 2022. Reclassifying the technical assistant to administrative assistant 1 in maintenance. adjusting senior planner and network engineers' wage bands, and adding two assistant construction superintendents for succession planning, and reclassifying a lineman and a foreman to accommodate these positions in electric. The changes to the compensation plan that increased wages have been accounted for in the 2022 budget, and staff is available for questions.
Thank you, Misty. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment on Resolution 67-21? If there is not, directors?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion, we table this as well, and I would like to ask staff to provide us a breakdown and description of how the step compensation plan works. From the description that we've been given, the holiday pay for our non-exempt uniformed police are only paid their holidays at the end of the year. And I just would like some better description of it, because we are approving the compensation plan for everyone else, but I don't see anything that's been brought to us giving an explanation of the step compensation plan.
Do I have a second to motion or to table this resolution? There is not. It will die for lack of a second. Any other comments or questions on Resolution 67-21? There being none, do I have a motion to approve Resolution 67-21 for the compensation plan for 2022?
So moved.
Have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Director Burns, would you amend your motion just to say subject to future approval of the 2022 budget?
Sounds fantastic.
Carol,
Yes.
have that?
I had it before they said it. I knew that's what he meant.
Thank you very much. Roll call.
Allen,
Yes.
Sappington,
Yes.
Wiley,
Yes.
Burns,
Yes.
Hunt,
Yes.
Rissler.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Thank you, Misty. Now, you're going to stay for this next one, I'm
Yes.
assuming. Resolution 68-21, amending Section 405 of the Employee Handbook.
Misty McLaughlin, HR Manager. The holiday section of the Employee Handbook, we are looking at changing that because of the new step compensation plan for the police department. HR and Finance did speak to police and fire departments. Police would like to have their holiday pay and a lump sum at the end of the year. Fire is wanting to stay with the holiday pay being in their base because of lot fee and all that stuff. So we would like to change the handbook. Just a new paragraph has been proposed to include that the holiday pay for non-exempt sworn police officers will not be included in their base pay. Instead, these employees will receive a lump sum payment at the end of the year. We're not aware of any impact this would have on the budget, and we are available for questions.
Thank you. Is anyone in the audience that has a comment or question on Resolution 68-21? There being none, directors?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So, when you pay them at the end of the year, how do you pay, like, when they work the holiday? You're supposed to pay within a certain amount of time. Are you giving them a base pay and then holding off that top layer, or how's that going to be paid out?
So basically, we pay them overtime when they work, but the actual 8 hours of holiday pay is paid out as a bonus at the end of the year.
Okay. Did they say what the benefit is of being paid at the end of the year? Because say, for example, somebody leaves halfway through the year, they don't get that pay?
Mm-mm. We believe that the benefit is trying to retain officers. People, that lump sum at the end of the year helps families. That's what the benefit I can see.
Okay.
So,
So all the officers get to vote on that, or was that just an executive decision?
I believe that,
See the chief shaking his head yes.
yeah, he went over it with the department, so.
And every officer agreed that sounded?
Yes, it was a majority.
Does that include dispatch?
No,
Okay,
Ju-
uniform
dispatch is not in
personnel.
that, yes.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Yes.
Anyone else?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
just a side note, as a retired fireman, police officers are interesting. And I think we just discovered that today.
Anyone else? Do I-
Madam Mayor,
Yes,
I'd
David.
just like to request the administrator to send us some kind of a breakdown as to what the STEP program is, the STEP. Listen, I have said it before and I'll say it again. I'm very, very pleased that we're doing something to pay our officers more. We have been a revolving door for decades, and I'm glad that we're finally addressing this problem and doing something to retain officers and build depth. But I would just like to know what the STEP program is. And I do have some concern as to how we would not be liable for a holiday that's earned but not paid if they leave before the end of the year, because they did work the holiday, and I would think that they would be owed that holiday pay. I'm really confused as to how that's an advantage to anyone, except the city for not having to pay it at the end of the year for those who've quit.
Madam Mayor?
Yes. Philip.
Director Allen, if it's okay, what I'd like to do is when we come back in 2 weeks with the new numbers for the budget to include a walkthrough of the STEP plan also.
Okay. Thank you.
And we'll verify that question also.
I appreciate it.
Anyone else? Do I have a motion to approve Resolution 68-21, amending Section 405 of the Employee Handbook?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Dappington,
Yes.
Smiley,
Yes.
Burns,
Yes?
Hunt,
Yes.
Rissler,
Yes.
Allen.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Thank you, Misty.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
Next is ordinances. Ordinance 21-23, placed on its third reading, amending municipal codes, sections 82-41, 98-62, 98-173, and 98-331, adjusting scheduled annual utility rate increases for years 2022 through 2026. Philip?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And before I formally present this ordinance for the third reading, if I may, I'd like to go over some history of rate increases and also, based on some of the discussion at the last board meeting, some options for the board. Kevin, if you would. And I hope everybody can see that. We sent this information out, but it wasn't summarized in percentages, so I'd just like to walk the board and the public through this process. What you see on the screen is, going back to 2004, the percentage of increases in the electrical rate, the percentages of increases in the water rate for the next 23,000 gallons, which is the second tier. You pay a minimum fee for the first 1,000 gallons, and then you pay a fee for the next 23,000 gallons, and then you pay there's another tier after that. Same thing on the wastewater. The next 19,000 gallons is the second tier, so we pay a fee, minimum fee for the first 1,000 gallons, and then we pay a minimum fee per 1,000 gallons for the next 19,000. And then for solid waste, and you can see there in 2014 we changed from hand pickup to automatic pickup. But what you can see in 2004, 17% increase in wastewater, 32% increase in the solid waste. 2006, there was a 26% increase in the water rate. Following year, there was a 27% increase and a 13% increase in solid waste. 2008, almost a 22% increase in solid waste. 2009, there was a 12% increase in electrical. 2011, it dropped, but then again in 2013, it went back to a 12% increase. In 2013, three ordinances were adopted. Ordinance 1315 and 1316, adopted in March of 2013, established specific step increases in the rates for water and wastewater for 2013, 2014, 2015, and 2016. And you can see that in water and wastewater in 2013, almost a 29% increase in the water rate, almost a 63% increase in wastewater. The second year in 2014, 7 and 3%, 2015, 7 and 33%. In 2016, almost a 7% increase in water rates. There wasn't an increase in the second tier on wastewater, but there was almost a 12% increase on the first tier from that first 1,000 gallons in wastewater. And those two ordinances in 2017 started the CPI plus 1% annual increase. And you can see beginning in 2017 those increases, 2.2, 2.4, 3.1, 2.5 throughout those years. In 2013, the board adopted Ordinance 1324 in June of that year, and it established a special rate for the electric. It increased that rate to 12%, by 12%, and then it also adopted a CPI annual increase from that date forward. And you can see that in 2014, 1.1%, and then going on 1.3, 0.1, 1.2, 1.2, 1.4, and so forth. And then in 2015, when the city changed from the twice-a-week hand pickup of solid waste to the automatic once-a-week pickup, the city created two tiers, the 64-gallon and the 96-gallon. The 96-gallon obviously increased the rate from the 64-gallon by almost 26%. And at that time, the board adopted, beginning in 2017, a CPI plus 1% increase, and you can see it follows the same increases in the water and the wastewater. Since 2017, those annual increases based on CPI for electric and CPI plus 1% for water, wastewater, and solid waste have averaged 1.25% on the electric and 2.48% for the remaining three utilities. I wasn't here in 2013, but I have to believe that based on my understanding of what the purpose was an attempt beginning in 2017 to try to prevent those large rate increases that the city had seen in the past, to do incremental annual rate increases over time to prevent those huge spikes of rate increases that you see in the years prior to 2017. The rate study that we did at the beginning of 2021, late 2020 and beginning in 2021, determined that 3 of those annual rate increases could be reduced. And the solid waste, which is the least dollar amount of our bills, needed to be increased. That rate study determined that the electrical rate could be reduced by 50%. The electrical rate increase that's currently in code could be reduced by 50%, the water reduced by 70%, the wastewater reduced by 20%, and an increase of 60% in the solid waste. So 3 of the 4 current incremental rates increases being proposed by the rate study were to be reduced. Next slide, please. We spent a lot of time earlier this week trying to come up with options for the board. And the 2 biggest options, obviously, are not pass the ordinance. Now, when we started the rate study, we were looking at CPI running historically 1.5%. As we got to the end of the rate study, we saw that CPI was a little higher than that, running about 3%. The problem today is CPI is at almost 7%. 6.9 was the last number that I heard. And that's a huge number. Based on the current ordinance, if this board does not pass something, then beginning in January for water, wastewater, and sanitation, our rates would increase by 8%, and in April, I think it is, our rates for electric would increase by 7%. In that rate study, we developed an average residential utility bill. And when you look at all of those rate increases, that would mean that that average residential bill would increase by 7.5%. The ordinance that's proposed in front of you, based on that 7% CPI, would increase that average that average residential utility bill by 3.6%. It would reduce that 7% increase in electric to 3.5%, reduce the rate for water to 2.4%, for wastewater to 6.4% from 8%, and for sanitation to 12.8% because it's an increase. But overall, to that utility bill, it would raise it by 3.6% instead of the 7.5% based on the current code. Next slide, please. Yesterday and today, I tried to develop options beyond what has been proposed in the code, knowing that the 7% CPI is a big number. And I just want to walk through 6 options that I developed today, basically. 3A, which would be what staff would recommend if you choose to amend the ordinance, is to amend the proposed ordinance to have no utility rate increase in 2022, and then proceed with the proposed annual utility rate increases using the then current annual CPI for 2023 through 2026. The future annual increases would still be dependent upon CPI on the current CPI. When we did the rate study, historically speaking, CPI was running for the last few years about 1.5%, and that was the CPI that we used in the rate study to try to use a comparison purposes. So option B would be to use that 1.5 CPI to replace the current CPI with a 1.5 for the next 5 years. And you can see what that would do would be to cause a 0.75% increase in electric, a 0.75% increase in water, 2% increase in wastewater, and a 4% increase in sanitation. And to that average residential bill that we used in the rate study, that would increase that by 1.3% a year. Option C is exactly like option B, but it forgoes a rate increase in 2022. Next slide, please. Those two options, B and C, are likely to be adequate for the city as long as we don't continue having huge inflation. Our costs are going up. So I say that if you choose that, as long as we don't have 6-7% inflation for the next 5 years, we should be okay. If we continue to have that, it may be something that we have to bring back for consideration to the board. Option D is, again, no utility increase in 2022. I don't like this option, but it averages out a 5-year rolling average for CPI. And if you go back and look at 2016 through 2020, the average CPI was 1.2%. But because of 2021, if we average that out, it's running about 2.5%, 2.56. But this would even out some high CPI in 1 year and sort of lower that base. Based on that 2.56 CPI, which isn't really applicable if you don't apply it to 2022, but if you did, that average residential bill would increase by 2.1%. Option E is to have no utility rate increase in 2022 and consider raising rates for 2023 at this time in 2022 based on the recommendations of the 2021 rate study, and do that year by year by year. If you did that, the annual increases as based on the rate study would still be dependent upon CPI. Option 5 is no utility rate increase for 5 years. At the end of 2026, we have to complete, per state law, a rate study on water rates. It would be my recommendation at that time we would do another rate study for all 4 utilities. And doing so, per state law, when we do that next rate study, we have to adopt the rates as recommended by that rate study specifically for water. That's the new state law. Using the 1.5 CPI that was used in the rate study, if you don't raise rates and CPI stayed at the same percentage for the next 5 years, just to get to that minimum rate that would normally get us there based on the 1.5, you would need almost a 4% increase in electric and water, almost a 10.5% increase in wastewater, and almost a 22% in sanitation to get to that same rate in 2027 that you would get to if you adopted the smaller rate increase annually. That overall percentage increase would be about 7.25%. From a standpoint of recommendation, we as staff would not recommend option F because of the fear that in 2027 you're going to have a significant rate increase. As I stated earlier in the beginning of this, if you wish to amend the budget, staff would recommend you consider option A, and option B would be second, option C would be third. We stand by our original recommendation, but we also understand the 7% CPI. So dropping that to not having a rate increase in 2022 because of the high CPI, we understand that and respect that. Dropping it next to the 1.5 based on what was in the rate study. Again, we believe that would work as long as we don't continue to have multiple years of high CPI percentages or high inflation. Madam Mayor, that's staff's presentation. We'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Philip. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to make a comment or have questions on Ordinance 21-23? If so, if you would come to the podium and give us your name, address, and you will have 3 minutes.
Yeah, my name's Daniel Olenek. I live at 109 North Britt Street, Siloam Springs. Rate increase for us is hard just for the fact that my wife doesn't make very much money. I am on disability. I get $831 a month. My wife doesn't get very much. My medical cost alone would pay for all you guys. I have $650,000 in medicines that I have to take a year. My wife go get a better job? Sure, she can. But then it messes me up. That puts me at, $12,000, $15,000 a month that we've got to come up with to pay for co-insurance or the co-payments for the medicines. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't see why. We've been doing this for 13 years. Yes, this is my first board meeting. I've never been here, don't know anything about any of this. But as you guys make money by sitting here and doing this. I don't. We don't. We don't make any of this. We pay for you guys' stuff, but do you guys give it back by increasing our rates for another 15 years every year? No. That's just costing us money. Yeah, you guys got all these projects and stuff like that. I understand that. There's other ways of paying for that stuff besides increasing our rates every year, over 13 years. I don't understand it, and I will not understand it. I don't see why there ain't more people here fighting against this. You know, it's using this, all of the utilities and stuff is getting used against us because you guys want to do something else with the money. There's no sense in it. What about the Don Hill $100,000 water bill that's been just blown away? All the utility vehicles and stuff that's brand new. Yes, I understand that we need that stuff, but there's other stuff that we can do to raise money to buy stuff like that. It's not just, you know, my grandma lives half a block away from me. She's on disability. She gets $1,200 a month. You guys keep rate increases going up. How's she going to afford anything? She's going to be living on a damn street, or she's going to have to sell her house just to be able to live. There's no reason for any of this. You know what happens whenever you guys get put on Social Security? You guys will be on the same fixed income. Besides, you guys will have the city paying for other stuff, retirement and all this other stuff. Not everybody has that option. I don't. Yes, I might have worked whenever I was younger, but from 21 on, I've been sick and in and out of the hospital for every 3 months until this new medicine come out. I still can't do nothing because if I do, it alone, that one medicine is $311,000 a year. You know how much money that is per month that I have to come up with or find a way to pay for? That's $7,500 a month. Who wants to pay $7,500 a month every month? Does any of you guys want to help me? That I don't see why you guys have to raise rates every year. I don't see it. You guys will vote however you guys vote. I know there's 2 people on here that'll vote no, but this is all I can do is I can speak my word, and then if you guys adjust, then oh well. I mean, I don't know. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Daniel. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am. State your name and address, please.
Jennifer Thorne, 2125 West Harvard Street. I'm just like Daniel. We don't make a whole lot of money either. We don't have a big retirement to fall back on. I am a nurse. I work with the elderly. A lot of them in the city of Siloam Springs are on a fixed income and are not going to be able to afford the rate increase. And then, yes, just like Daniel said, you have other businesses like Don Hill that have gotten their utility bills just paid for or forgotten about. But yet you want to increase the utility rates for us hardworking community of Siloam Springs. We just want you guys to help take care of us just as well as we help take care of the city of Siloam. And that's all we ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Is there anyone else?
Larry Kennemore, 207 Western Hills Drive. First, I'm going to address the board as a whole. I'm here to remind you, as a board, that you're here by the people of Siloam Springs and for the people of Siloam Springs. As Mindy Hunt showed the citizens, you stand by your words. You don't have to vote for this, but you can do something else, as you said. As to Carol Smiley, you say you only heard from 2 or 3 citizens in the past, but social media shows at least a dozen you heard from before the last meeting. Yes, prices are going up everywhere. That does not mean since you have a balanced budget already, you need to fleece us for another $1 million a year. Too bad Reed Carroll is not here. As to Marla Sappington, you say get levelized billing and live within our means. Senior citizens that elected you are trying to do that. But you want to take more from them? Yes, we may get an increase in Social Security. However, the Medicare rate increase that's coming this year completely wipes out the increase in the Social Security. So senior citizens do not have increased funds. As to levelized billing, we're going to still be paying the increased rate with levelized billing. It does not save the citizens a penny. You want us to conserve energy? How about this? I replaced all my bulbs with LED, upgraded the central heat and air, and with all those extra costs, I haven't saved a penny because you keep increasing the rates, and I'm paying more now than before I did all those upgrades. As to Brad Burns, you go without certain things in life when there are rate increases, so I guess you're asking those on fixed income to go without food, clothing, etc. The real question is, while you have been on the board, you have allowed a city customer to have a $100,000 plus unpaid water bill. If you had collected that before they went into bankruptcy, you wouldn't need a rate increase. You say you want to run the city as a business? If so, what business lets someone get them for $100,000? Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Is there anyone else? Yes, ma'am. Please state your name and address, and you will have 3
I really
minutes.
am grumpy, but not really. I'm Jan Nelson, 115 West Tahlequah. And I moved here a year and a half ago. I've lived in Atlanta, I've lived in Florida, and I've never seen such amounts for utilities. I keep my house at 62 degrees, and I have no idea what the utility bill will be this month. I know it was $200 last month. And just with the economic of the pandemic and the economic status of Siloam Springs, you want it for the residents. Don't look at those that make $200,000 and $300,000. Look at us that make $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, or no $1,000. You are hurting us, and it's not fun. I had to go to the bank crying today because I had an overdraft. It wasn't my fault. It got figured out, but it's that tight. I didn't know if I would have gas to put in the car. So remember that we are living very tightly. The pandemic has taken a huge toll on all of us, but the majority of the residents are just eking by. Look at those that are single with children. Look at those that on What's Up Siloam need blankets, need heaters, need things like that. And surely we can be creative enough to find income elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
My name is James McGurk. I live at 412 West University Street.
Thank you.
The last 3 meetings I've been here to listen to what's going on with this rate increase and all this. I've heard about, well, you need to budget your money better, or stuff that doesn't have anything to do with it. I'm against this. We elected all of you to speak and stand up for the citizens of this city, and you're not doing it. You're doing what you want to do. I have never met a bunch of people that are so obsessed with what they are. Like, oh, I don't know, I'm a ward person. I'm in charge of a ward. Everybody can do that, I guess. But this is not right. You cannot prove to me this is a right thing to do to the citizens of this city. Like everybody else has said, we know, my wife and I know 2 or 3 couples that are on such a fixed income that they will go days without turning on a light bulb. Everything that lights up or whatever is unplugged. Their refrigerator and their clothes dryer are the only things they use 4 or 5 days a week. And I just don't get why they have to suffer like they do when, oh, move to Siloam Springs. It's a great place to live.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Todd Lankford, 3990 South Elm.
Thank you.
Excuse me, I didn't have anything prepared. I actually just got in from Texas, so beautiful fire trucks out front, beautiful. While I support our police and fire department 100%, love our police and fire department, we've got a lot of brand new vehicles. We also have a balanced budget. There's really never been, through all the wonderful options he's given us here, there's never really been one of getting rid of the current increase and not having an increase. Our current economic climate doesn't really allow for citizens, especially fixed income citizens, to have an increase yearly. It's been said that everyone up here was voted in by these people sitting in this room, and the ones that may be watching now or follow on social media and stuff. It's irresponsible to make an increase for an X amount of years without reviewing the prior year. It should be year by year by year if we have an increase at all. That would be more for the people. It's been said that citizens should live within their means, but yet we allow the city to have an open checkbook. Should a city of Siloam Springs not also live within their means? They should be, the money collected through utilities is supposed to be non-for-profit. So why are we trying to push, we're trying to push an increase to maybe cover up, our frivolous spending? Why are we not putting our city on a budget and holding our city accountable rather than, well, we'll just get some more money from the people? Anyways, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? If not, directors?
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Brad.
I'll kick this program off. I am Brad Burns. I represent Ward 2. Only people that live in Ward 2 voted for me. I'm on my second term. That's why I refer to myself as representing Ward 2. So I want to be clear on that. Had a great call this evening from Mr. Anglin. Sue Anglin sat on the board for many, many years. We disagree on the utilities, and he asked something of me. A great, sincere call from a citizen that's been here since 1938. And I don't know if he called anybody else, but actually I was trying to get ready for the meeting, and I think 30 minutes went by. He was just good to talk to, and we talked about a lot of things, Sager Creek and the city of Siloam. But anyway, I appreciate that phone call, Mr. Anglin. I'm going to give a little quote from Bob Dole, who passed away. You earn the trust by speaking openly and honestly. And I think everybody on this board has the best intent for the citizens. I truly believe that. And I hear the voices out there. And Don Hill is a whole nother animal. And we could spend a week talking about litigation, lawsuits, bankruptcy, all that stuff. Has nothing to do with today. So the question has been asked, when is enough enough? And my answer tonight, sir, is this evening. That's when enough is enough. Members of this board desire to be fair and equitable to all regarding utility rates. Some board members were not present when we requested a rate study, and we budgeted $125,000. And we received a utility rate study because we wanted to be fair and equitable. And in that utility rate study, in section 1.6, prioritized recommendations, and here they are in the order of importance. Number 1, to meet the future funding needs, implement proposed rate studies under existing structures for all 4 utilities. Note, the effect of these increases is less than would otherwise be adopted under existing CPI-based rate ordinance. Number 2, freeze residential and commercial all-electric service discount rate with a 5-year sunset. Number 3, consolidate large and small power classes, eliminating the small power declining block rate structure. And number 4, adopt an alternate water and sewer structure with graduated fixed fee by meter size and no minimum required volume. So at the end of the study, those are the 4 recommendations, and the number 1 is right there. The intent of the board, at least on my end, is that I desire to lower utility rates. And that has been done, except for solid waste. And so as we went through our options here, and they're all great options, I like option A. I like option B. But at the end of the day, we have to do something. And my desire to have that utility rate study is that we knew the CPI was off and we needed to decrease the utilities. That is a fact. And I don't follow a lot of social media because I'm not in the spin zone. I live in a place called I just want the truth right here. And I don't want to manipulate anybody's mind. And there's not a person on this board that is not sympathetic and does not have compassion for the citizens that spoke this evening. And I wish there was something more that could be done for you. Having said that, the best I can do on the board is continue to see how we can reduce utility rates. And we've done that in 3 of the 4 utilities. And we still have more work to do. No matter what gets passed tonight, up or down, we have to go back to the board next year and we have to continue to work on how we budget. We have to wean ourselves off of the years and years of transferring funds from the electrical department and start budgeting in a different manner. That is a fact. It's been stated by citizens. I had a meeting Friday with a city administrator, and I don't have those very often. And I had some concerns, some lighting issues in my residential area that were addressed. And this right here, how does it look going forward in the budget? The citizens spoke. How do we make that work? So tonight, we have some options on the table. And I am honestly looking forward to see what we decide. And at the end of the day, it looks like A and B are solid options. But if we don't do anything next year, when 2023 rolls around, where are we going to be at? I hope the economy changes. I hope inflation tampers down. Or is it going to be like the gas prices, where we reach into reserves and we throw some gas out there, and if you go to the pump today, it's dropped a nickel or a dime, maybe 20 cents if you buy the Walmart card, right? But it's going to bounce back up because it's a Band-Aid. I want something long-term. I want to fix those rates. I want them incremental. I want them flat, and however we vote, if there's a word sunset on the end of that, I want this board to do hard work over those next 4 or 5 years so that they stay flat. That is the goal and the intent of that rate study. So I hope we can accomplish that this evening. Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Mindy?
As I've mentioned during the last 2 meetings, I wait until the 3rd reading of ordinances to make my final decisions. That doesn't mean I don't have opinions or leanings related to ordinances being presented to the board, but I don't share those opinions publicly because I do want to take citizens' concerns into consideration when making my decisions. Having 3 readings over a period of 3 meetings gives citizens the chance to reach out to board members, and then waiting until the final reading to make my decision gives me the chance to hear from all who want to express concerns and then make my decisions accordingly. Over the past few weeks, I have heard from several citizens with concerns and or questions related to the utility rate ordinance that's being presented to us tonight. The questions I have heard most often are, 1, why can't we evaluate the rates annually to determine if they need to be increased? 2, why have increases been automatic for the past several years? 3, why is the increase based on CPI? And 4, why are utility rates higher in Siloam than elsewhere?
We even had some of those questions raised tonight. After doing much research, I've come up with what I believe to be answers to these questions. This is my understanding of the answers to these questions, and it's based on the information that I've collected. As for an annual evaluation to determine if a rate increase is needed, it seems to me that doing so would most likely require outsourcing, thus paying a fee to someone who could do a formal rate study yearly. Though in retrospect, I can say I am now glad that we conducted a utility rate study recently. I was not in favor of it when it was presented. I was one of 3 who voted against the study because of the costs associated with it and the perception that a rate study meant an increase in rates. As it turns out, the study showed that we could lower the annual increases, which was positive news. As it turns out, the rate study showed that we could, regardless, annual rate studies would cost and would not give us the long-term view we need in order to see where current rates are taking us and to determine if they will meet budgetary needs required to maintain the current level of service, cover cost of needed equipment for the city, and have ample savings or reserves for catastrophes, like the winter storm of 2021, for which this board asked the city to pay $3.8 million out of reserves to cover the cost rather than to pass those costs along to the customers/citizens. Why have increases been automatic for the past several years? It's my understanding, and we saw this tonight, that in the early 2000s, rates were rarely increased, though we also did say that there were a few big spikes during that time. But then in 2013, the board had to raise rates significantly to catch up with increasing cost. In 2014, the board increased rates for the next 3 years by a specific amount and instituted the CPI calculation for electric rates. And this is something that Mr. Patterson just presented to us. Then in 2017, the board established the current code that states rates shall be adjusted annually in accordance with the CPI. Why did the board choose CPI as the standard on which to base the increases? That's a question I have not been able to find a research-based answer for, but I have no doubt that the board members at that time were just as concerned about our citizens as current board members are. I trust research was done to determine an equitable way to incrementally raise rates so that there wouldn't be a big jump from one year to the next like there was in 2013. And why are Siloam's utility rates higher than elsewhere? I don't know how our rates compare to every city our size, but I do know how we compare to about 10 other cities our size, as well as the big 4 cities along the corridor. A comparison was done as part of the rate study, and indeed, Siloam's rates are above average for each of the 4 utilities. People and businesses considering moves look at utility rates where they are thinking of moving. We want our rates to be competitive with others, as opposed to consistently higher than others, which may discourage people from moving here. On a related note, several citizens have indicated that they feel like their rates recently have been higher than normal. I do encourage those who feel like there may have been a mistake that caused higher than normal rates to call the utility office. There may have been some sort of mistake, but call the utility office and they can check into it. As we know, the recent rate study determined that the current annual increases are more than are necessary to meet budgetary needs for the next 5 years. Therefore, the city is recommending a lesser increase than would happen automatically if we don't approve the recommendation. Yes, it is still an increase, but it's less of an increase than would be the case if we were to vote no to the proposed ordinance without making any alternative recommendations. The city is making a recommendation related to utility rates because that's what they are tasked to do. They make recommendations based on information they gather. As a board, we can either deny the recommendations, accept them as is, or amend what they're recommending based on information we have, which in most cases is citizen feedback. On a separate but related note, based on one comment I received regarding the utility rate vote, I think it may be helpful to remind citizens that as a board, we cannot speak about current or future city issues with each other outside of board meetings or other meetings for which the public has been notified. To do so violates the open meeting requirement that is part of Arkansas Freedom of Information Act. We can share our opinions and recommendations with each other during board and other public meetings, but we cannot work on getting other board members to vote in a certain way on issues outside of these meetings that the public has been notified about. Many of the citizens I've spoken with understand that the reasoning behind incremental utility rate increases is to keep up with inflation, and some have expressed that they prefer the small annual increases as opposed to occasional big spikes. With that said, no one likes paying more. For the most part, those who have reached out to board members have done so to express concerns about raising the rates at a time when everything is going up in cost: food, groceries, gas, etc. It's for this reason that I propose waiting until 2023 to implement any increase. I am most in favor of the amendment that says to amend the proposed ordinance to have no utility rate increase in 2022 and then proceed with the proposed annual utility rate increases for 2023 through 2026 using the 1.5% CPI, not the current CPI, which is higher, as was explained to us. I would also like us to reconsider the discount we give to senior citizens on a fixed income. Currently it's $5 off electric. It is about $15, I believe, off, no, it's about $10 off of sanitation. So it's a total of about $15 discount, but we might want to consider somewhat of an increase in the discount for senior citizens on a fixed income. I have heard from several senior citizens who have been very concerned. Not only will my recommendation to postpone any increase to 2023 give citizens a break from one more increased cost in an already trying time economically, but it will give them time to prepare for future adjustments, and the proposed future adjustments will then prevent a big spike like we had back in 2014. I don't want to see that. With the concerns that have been expressed over increased utility rates, I understand those concerns, but I think even worse would be to come to a year when you've budgeted for a certain amount for 5 or 6 years and all of a sudden you're paying 10-15% more in 1 year, and those incremental increases prevent that. But again, give us a break this year. It will also, postponing, allow for our rates to get more in line with what the average is. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mindy. Is there anyone else?
Madam Mayor.
Lisa?
First I want to say this isn't a decrease in utilities. It's a proposal to reduce an increase only. The utility rate study, when we voted on it, and Director Hunt, you can correct me, but I think Director Hunt and myself voted no for that utility rate study at that time.
There were 3 of us that voted no.
Oh, okay. And Marla Sappington, Director Hunt, Sappington voted no. And so a rate study is a suggestion. It's not a Bible. We don't go by it. We don't have to live by it. It's not a rule book. It's a suggestion for us to look at and see if it works for our government. I think we should look at it on a yearly basis. We have intelligent enough staff that can calculate the appropriate need on a year-by-year basis to avoid a large increase at one time. I think we should drop the CPI because it's a variable number. I've heard over and over, people need to budget their money. How do you budget a variable number? And if you can do that, you need to educate me, and I have a lot of education. You cannot budget a variable number. So, as we could see by CPI, the companies that use CPI are the companies that want huge gains. Are we trying to gain so much money? How big does our savings need to be? And yes, I understand that we use it for emergencies, and we did vote to use it for emergency. But it doesn't have to be so large that it breaks our citizens. And I'm voting no increase in 2022, and I think we should look on it on a yearly basis because we're voted by the people to look at the variables every year. It seems lazy for me to say, oh, yeah, 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road or permanent increases, so I don't have to look at it every year. We should look at it every year. There's so many variables to our economy that affect us every day. It affects our households. It affects our government. We should be looking at it on a yearly basis. And so I'm proposing, I agree with Director Hunt, we shouldn't do a raise for next year, but I'm also proposing that we drop the CPI and we look at it on a yearly basis.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Madam Mayor.
Marla?
I also have trouble with the CPI. I think that's an urbanized number, and we are not any relation to that. It's hard. It's like apples and oranges. I think that we need to take consideration of what it takes to run each department, and then go from that to see what we need to charge for the services with a moderate increase to pay for our needs, not our wants. And I've always said that there's a difference between wants and needs, and I want our city to be operating at the best that it can with the best that we can get it. But I also want our citizens to feel like we're putting them first, or we care about them and listen to them. I don't have a prepared script. I'm not eloquent in my speaking. I am firm in my belief that the truth is what needs to be out there. And the truth is, it takes money to run the city, but the city is also here to protect the citizens. And if the citizens feel like they're getting the short end of the stick because they're having to pay for everything, I think we need to paint a clearer picture. I think we need to show them that if our utility rates are so much, it's because it takes so much to pay for it from GRDA, and then we add, you know, a 10 or 20% increase to pay for our supplies and our needs. I don't like the CPI. I've read up on it and looked at it, and it scares me, because if we go in and do the CPI as 1.5 and it's actually 7, what happens when we go and actually use the CPI again? It could be drastic, or it could be lower. Who knows? But in the economy that we're in right now, I see it every day. I help people pay their utility bills. I understand the needs and concerns, and I want to do what we can. And like Director Hunt said, you know, the third vote is when we really, you know, the metal hits the road, or whatever they say. You know, that's when we make our decision. And I've appreciated visiting with several of the citizens and getting emails. And I see the concern, I understand it, and I want to do what I can. Before, we just had the two options to look at, you know, do what we've been doing for the last 5 years, or go ahead and increase, but it's not going to be as much as it could be because we did our rate study. I agree that we don't need to do anything next year but watch, find a better way to figure this, calculate it. We have, like Director Rissler said, we have some very intelligent people on staff that can figure this out within house, and I think we need to utilize that. It just, you know, it's a hard decision. We're in a difficult place, and I am not setting up here trying to, you know, prove who I am or what I do. I'm not that type of person. I thoroughly care about each of you. I know many of you for many years, and it's difficult, and so I appreciate having the other options, and it clears up some of the way of thinking. But I am for not raising it for 1 year. I'm also interested in looking into a utility board that would help us look at the different rates that we have, and how the charges come about. One of the charges I worry about is wastewater, because I don't know how that's calculated. Do they base it on how much water comes out of my faucet is going to go down to wastewater? And how do they come up with that, and then that's going to be one of the ones that will be affected higher than the others. So, you know, like I said, it's difficult, and we hear you, and we're listening.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Carol.
This is probably the most difficult decision that I've had to make while I've been on the board. Lots of thought has gone into how I'm going to vote. You wonder. We are asked to be fiscally responsible with the city revenue, but also serve our citizens responsibly. I think back to the winter last year and the nearly $4 million that the city was charged by GRDA without passing that expense to the customer. This winter doesn't look any better. It has been stated that Texas is not prepared, and the city could experience the same electrical outcome. Looking at the reserves the city has, we are required to keep a certain dollar amount of revenue on hand, and I believe we have that. But if emergencies arise, we will surely use that, and we'll have to pass the cost on. With that being said, it is my responsibility to provide the citizens with utilities with fiscally responsible rates. I do believe the rates increase should be paused for 2022. And I believe that we go to the rates for 23 through 27 using the 1.5 CPI. Although I am a little bit like Director Sappington, I'm not really sure how that CPR works. I'm also in favor of a utility board. I think there is a group that could work with us to advise us to what we need to do. And I did get a lot of calls. At the first two meetings, I had very little. Prior to this meeting, I have had a lot of phone calls, I have had a lot of email, and not one has been in favor of an increase. I don't know who would be in favor, but anyway, that's been the outcome. And I did get a phone call from Mr. Anglin. Sue Anglin was a great board of director for the small person, for the average citizen. And I always ask myself, what do I believe she would do? And I do believe that she would not approve a utility rate for this year. But this is a city that it costs the city to run. Perhaps we do need to look at our expenses and see where we can tighten our belt. In this day and age, everybody has to tighten their belt. We are not responsible for all of the increases that are going on. There's food increase, there's gas increase. Everywhere you look, the price has gone up. We have to, as a city, we have to pay those prices. So we have to be careful of what we're doing. So I appreciate all of the phone calls. I appreciate all the emails. I appreciate the citizens taking the time to express their concerns, their life situation, and how that increase would affect them. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, David.
Before I go over my notes, I'd like to respond or read an email from a constituent who sent this evening just before the board meeting started, who could not make it and asked me to read it. In response to the pushback against the utility increases, a couple board members responded by saying, quote, "People need to live within their means," unquote. How insulting. It is not any board member's place or your right to judge or assume people profligate their earnings. How many people do you imagine live paycheck to paycheck or can't afford decent clothes or can't afford to repair their cars or can't afford a decent Christmas for their children? I would almost promise it's more than you think. People that are already barely able to, quote, live within their means are about to have a bit more of a struggle if you vote to increase the rates. Think about that. Board members allude that the increase will be so minute that it won't really be noticeable. My utility bill over the last 3 years in the month of October has been $375, $448, and $576 consecutively. That in itself is already outrageous, and it gets higher and higher every year. And I know that I am not an outlier. I don't believe that this increase is going to be so insignificant that people won't notice. I believe that is a bold-faced lie. Lastly, and perhaps most importantly, how many people besides yourselves have you met that are in favor of the increase? And how many have you met that are against it? How many citizens that voted for you are you willing to truly represent? Ask yourself that honestly. If you turn a blind eye to what the citizens want and have actively expressed their opinions about, then you have absolutely no business being in the position that you are in. The people trust you to act in their best interests, and I think the consensus is that we, the citizens of this town, do not feel this is in our best interest. Furthermore, despite the board members saying our city is progressive and proactive and has great management, I can attest that nothing is further from the truth. There is a lack of proactivity, and what's more and even more sad is that there is even a lack of reactivity and no follow-through. 2 months ago, my utility bill was not processed online through no fault of my own. My electricity was about to be shut off. I paid the bill before the electricity ever was shut off. Yet I was charged not one, but 2 penalties, $50 each. Why? Why was I charged 2 penalties, or even one for that matter? I was never given an explanation. I was not reimbursed or given a credit. It was my understanding that this would be reversed and that I would get an explanation and perhaps an apology. I can do without an apology, and it's apparent that you think I can also do without the $100 that was wrongfully taken from me. But why am I not surprised? After hearing your banter about living within your means and not wanting to hear the drama, I really shouldn't be surprised. A city administrator that is paid well over $100,000 a year wouldn't understand the effects of these kinds of injustices. You've heard the voice of the citizens, yet the past 2 meetings you lull the issue. Enough is enough. That was one constituent living within the city. I also got a call from Ilford England. And he told me, point blank, what to say. He said, I want you to say, to remind every board member that you are here to represent the people of your ward, not what you want. I was one of the few in this room who worked with Sue England. And she was a magnificent lady. She did work hard for the citizens. She listened to every one of them, and she paid attention to their pocketbook. And I can tell you, in no uncertain terms, how she would vote. This is the most unconscionable decision I have ever seen in the history of my 40 years dealing with this city. It is disappointing, to say the least, that these options of other alternative choices were sent to us in the 11th hour today. Not after concerns brought up by a minority of the board members in the previous 2 meetings. Having an automatic rate increase every year for however many years is just point blank lazy. It does not give any thought to the every year differentiation of economics, whether it be the city or the citizens. Brad, you didn't say that you're actually raising the rates. You actually said we're lowering the rates. I wrote it down. That's exactly what you said. You were not. We're increasing the rates, but lower than the current ordinance. There has been a lot of waste. A lot of waste. And we can balance our budget better. And we can bring in money better. We have been told that the money that will be coming in 2022 from this increase across the utilities will be a little over $1 million. We have $16 million in reserves. There is no reason that we must have that $1 million right now. There has been waste. We had $11 million from the sale of the hospital, and it got spent on the library, and $3 million for a park with an amphitheater. Now they're planning to spend $10 million for a widening and redo of East Main.
Madam Mayor, point to order.
I am talking. I have the floor.
We have a point of order. Discussions will cease.
I am telling you,
David.
he went off on so many subjects that were not within the and he does it every meeting.
We have had a point of order.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
So it looks like what we have on the table right now is we have to make a decision. So either we amend what was approved in 2017, or we are going to have a 7.5% increase, or we amend that and then we go back and look at when we say no utility increase, that means 0. And it looks like my observation, what I've heard so far, as I have written down, is that it looks like we're caught somewhere between A and C.
So Brad, do you have a motion?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, what is your motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the amended ordinance A, amend proposed ordinance to have no utility increase 2022, then proceed with a proposal of annual utility rate increase using then the current CPI in 2023-26. Having said that, in 2022, we have talked about this in workshops before about a utility board. It has been mentioned multiple times this evening, and it looks like that's a direction we need to pursue. And that'll give us a year of no utility increases to evaluate what that CPI, even if we go with it, we can amend that before 23 budget rolls around.
So is that a part of your motion that you want to establish?
No, I'm just clearly stating that is one of our options with A. I have no idea if anybody else reads into that.
Okay, but do you want to make that a part of your?
I would love to make that a part of my motion, is that in 2022, we evaluate the CPI for 23 through 26.
Okay. So we have a motion to amend Ordinance 21-23 with option A being a part of that, which would be no utility increases in this year, and to establish a utilities board going forward. Is that correct?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Do I have a second?
Before I say that, what?
Just a moment. We have a question from our clerk. Yes, ma'am.
Does 3A include evaluating the CPI annually?
That's what I was going to say.
Okay.
Is that what you are choosing? Is that correct, to evaluate that? Yes.
Yes.
That is correct.
Okay, so the motion is to amend the ordinance to option 3A and to establish a utility board.
Yes.
Yes, please.
All right, thank you so much.
And do I have a second?
And I'm sorry.
Yes.
And to evaluate CPI in 2022 for 2023 and so forth.
Yes. Part of that based on the future CPI, and when I look at based on the future CPI, based on Director Risler's comments, is that, you know, that may or may not even exist for us.
Up the yearly. Because that's still doing it as a 5-year, and I think I heard multiple people say
I would not disagree, but if we establish a utility board, then that gives us the information that we can vote that up or down before 23 rolls around.
And I like the utility board as long as the board of directors have complete input on who's on that utility board.
I think it was, one of our workshop presentation was pros and cons, and that was one of our concerns. Yes.
Philip, do you have a question about the motion?
Well, one of the board's goals for 2022 is to look at the pros and cons of a utility board.
Right.
So that's on staff's to-do list. I want to make sure that we understand what you're saying from the standpoint, taking the utility board off for just a second. But adopt option A, and annually, beginning in 2022, look at the CPI that it's running for the following years, not just 2023, but in 2023 for 2024 and 2024 for 2025. Is that?
Or possibly dropping CPI.
That is potential, and I'm just trying to bring peace
Yes, sir, I
to the
understand.
valley.
I understand.
Yes, sir.
But the idea is to evaluate the rates.
Yes.
Yes, okay. I just wanted to make sure I get it correct. Thanks.
Thank you. Carol, you still have a second to that?
Yes.
Can we still ask a question? Okay.
Madam Mayor,
Or-
I'd like to make an amendment to that motion. I would like to have 0 rate increases for 2022 through 2026 and annually consider raising the rates for 23 through 26 based on the recommendations from the rate study and setting up a utility board.
Okay.
What I just read is letter E, and I'm making that a motion to amend.
Since we have a motion, a second, don't we need to vote on that before he can amend
No,
something?
you vote on the amendment
I
first.
think we'll have to do the amendment first to
Okay.
amend the motion.
Oh, so he needs a second.
So we need a second.
Second.
So our first vote and a motion and a second is for amending the motion for ordinance 2123 to go with item E. Is that correct, David? That has been given to you all?
I want to point out that
Option
that
E?
does not follow CPI as letter A does, but instead follows the recommendations of the rate study.
Of the rate study. And there would be no increase 2022 through 2026.
No automatic, yes.
No automatic.
But would still be considered annually after this year,
With the
this
board.
next year.
Okay. Everyone understand that?
So we're looking at E.
That's correct. On this amendment,
So the consider raising rates part in 22 for 23,
23.
right? So no rate increase in 2022. The part that I'm confused by
Automatic.
here, I'm looking at E. It says amend the proposed ordinance to have no utility rate increase for 22 through 2026. So that says no increase for 5 years. But then the next statement says to me, but we could decide at the end of 22 that we do need to increase the rates in
that is
2023.
correct. That is my understanding. Yes, that it would
What
be
it's,
your
what it's
option.
eliminating is the automatic.
It's the
rate.
automatic that wouldn't happen. Wouldn't be
And-
automatic.
And letter A actually goes back to the CPI and goes back to the original reduction of the increase. If a
But you're
utility
wanting
board
to
is set up,
change
then it
the
would-
based on future CPI part of that bullet point underneath E as well, right?
I can't hear you.
You're wanting to change the based on future CPI part of that bullet point under E? Because
There is no CPI in letter E.
Yes, there is.
there is. The bullet point says overall annual increase to average residential utility bill will be based on future CPI.
I'm talking about letter E on the options
I'm
that we
looking at
have.
E.
We're looking at that.
Amend the ordinance to have no rate increases and annually consider raising rates for 23 through 26 based on recommendations from the rate study.
But look at the bullet point right underneath it.
But at that time, we can consider if we want to continue with CPI or not.
You're talking about letter F, the next one?
It's E, right below E, the bullet point. Are you looking at
Are we,
this?
do we have two separate?
No, we were sent.
Oh, I think this is the same. but
Oh, you've got a handout.
Director Allen,
It's on
we look on the screen.
green.
What you're saying, and I'm trying to, bear with me just a second. I believe both you and Director Burns are trying to get to the same spot, which is no increase in 2022 and then in 2022, review the rates for 2023 and every year thereafter until 2026 when we have to do a future rate study. Whether it's, as Director Burns was saying, option A is going back to the CPI, which is based on the rate study, based on the future CPI, and this one is option E. Again, no rate increases for 2022, and then for 2023, consider raising or review the rates for 2023 and 2022, using the recommendations as a starting point, the recommendation of the rate study as a starting point. In both cases, that's what we would be doing, correct?
But I am not wanting us to reference CPI in this.
I completely understand, and
your bullet point does. It says based on future CPI.
Well, all that was intended to do was to say, review raising rates for 2023 based on the recommendations of the 2021 rate study, which was using an annual CPI. But once you review it, you will have the option to do whichever the board decides to do, whether you recognize CPI as 1.5% or 5% or whatever, and use that in your consideration, but you don't have to follow it.
And the utility board, if it is set up, can completely throw out the rate study. They don't have to follow the rate study.
That is correct. You don't have to follow the rate study. And the Director Ressler, to your comment, it would be however the board, you decide to set up a utility board, how much authority you give them or not. Typically, some utility boards have complete autonomy to set rates. Some utility boards have to make a recommendation back to the city board. That would be something that we would make a recommendation and you would have to decide. So, in hearing the amendment versus the original motion, I kind of think, with the exception, Director Allen, of referencing CPI, it's an attempt to say no raises in 2022, and then in 2022 and every year thereafter through 2026, consider or review the rates on an annual basis. We can use the rate study, the 2021 rate study, as a starting point, but that's it.
You just said starting 2022. You mean 2023.
In 2022, look at the rates for 2023.
Oh, okay.
You have to, obviously, it's what we're doing today. But using the rate study as at least a starting point. I don't know how to say that yet in an ordinance, but Jay and I will figure that out.
Say that.
Well, what I would say is, if you're both in agreement that we're at the same point, just a different verbiage, if that's okay, I would probably say that if we were to amend the ordinance on that, I would likely just say that those sections would be deleted and renumbered, the sections in the code referencing CPI. That there would be no annual increase, and we would have to bring back for your consideration toward the end of 2022, some information on rates and your decision as to what to do for 2023. We'd do the same again for 2023 and 24 and 25 and 26.
Madam Mayor.
I don't believe so, Philip.
Okay.
I don't believe that the ordinances we have should reference anything about CPI or annual adjustments. I believe that the ordinance needs to say that it will have no rate increase, automatic rate increases for 2022 through 2026, and annually consider raising rates for 23 through 26 based on recommendation from the rate study as a starting point and establishing a utility board. That's what I read, and that's what I want the ordinance to say.
Okay, so those 4 sections in code would be amended to read, as in the case of section 8241, annual CPI adjustment is hereby repealed. There will be no rate increases beginning in 2022, and through 2026, the board will annually review rates based on the 2021, and I'm paraphrasing, I'm sorry, based on the 2021 rate study. And I don't think you have to add to code the issue of a utility board, because we're going to bring that.
You're already going to bring it up.
It's already
Okay.
on the list of things we're going to work on in 2022. We'll bring it forward. I don't know what the time frame was, but we'll start working on it right after first of the year.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Mindy.
if E is with the amendments to the amendment that are being recommended, if that is what this board would like to go with, I have no problem with that. I did just want to mention the reason I had mentioned C, which does have the automatic increase after 23, so no increase in 22. And I understand the concern with the automatic increase language. But essentially, using the 1.5% CPI in the study is for the most part eliminating CPI, because CPI is so much higher than that right now. It still says CPI, but that would guarantee a lower annual rate than using whatever the current CPI is, which is so high right now. But if we need to take that language out altogether, and we feel like that is doable.
Okay, so as it stands right now, we have a motion by Director Allen, and who made the Lisa, you made the second, is that correct? Okay. And that would include what Mr. Patterson has just stated that our ordinance would be. In other words, there would be no automatic increases 23 through 26. There is no increase at all in 2022. There would be an annual review presented to this board for any increases that would be proposed. And the CPI is going away. Is that what everyone understands?
Madam Mayor, may I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
I didn't get to speak. My concern is with the CPI, but my concern is also when we establish the board, I don't know if what we want to accomplish can be done in 1 year's time. And because that's going to be putting a lot of heavy lifting on the board, and we're going to have to be looking at what our expectations of them and what they need to bring back to us. And I want us to be realistic and open and say, I don't know if we'll be ready in the end of 2022 to be able to make the decision for 2023. The rate study, I don't know if that's a good number. I don't know if we need to average the last 4 years and the next year's CPI. I don't like CPI. It has no relationship to the economy that we live in. It's big city numbers. And I don't like using it. And so I just want us to be out and open and say that we may not be able to accomplish what we expect with our board in 1 year's time. And we need to make a projection for that in our statement.
Are you saying you don't want the rate study in the amendment at all? You don't want the reference of the rate study because it's based on the CPI?
Well, we're going to have to use something.
Yeah.
But I don't want us to imply that CPI is the important thing. That's not. The important thing to me is how much does it cost to get our utilities? How much does it cost to operate? and what is the margin of income we want to make off the citizens? And that's what
Just
I want,
summarized it very well, right there.
and that's what I want to know.
So we're doing away, though, with the CPI with this, except for as it relates to the utility rate study. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Yes.
And that's just something to look at.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Director
just a
Allen,
look.
That's just something to look at.
Would you state what you would like to state what you would like those code sections to say again, and with the understanding to give staff some flexibility for wordsmithing, but the intent is to state it as
Well, the whole reference to annual CPI adjustment can be removed and simply state that there will be no rate increases for 2022. And from 2023 through 2026, rates will be reviewed annually and using the rate study as a starting point.
Thank you.
But I gotta say, I think the utility board can get going in this next year, and I think they can. Marley, you said do a lot of heavy lifting. I think that we and them can do a lot of heavy lifting and have this summarized and much better analysis by utility board a year from now. I really do believe that it's possible. You know, my time, there is no private time for me. All my time is open, and it's just, we need to be working for the betterment of the citizens.
Okay, so,
And I think Philip understood just now what we're
Yeah.
trying to accomplish.
I believe that's correct, and I believe we have it stated the way we want it
But
to
I
be.
would really like to see that utility board get started ASAP after the first of the year.
And I
Yeah.
believe that is the
Yeah.
direction that the
Yeah.
administrator has said. It is in your goals, so therefore it will be happening and moving forward.
Madam Mayor.
So,
One-
yes.
One more. Again, if we need to do away with CPI, we can do away with CPI. I will state that I have talked to a couple of people who study economics. That's their thing. When I've said, what do you think about CPI, and using that as the basis, the question has been, well, what else would you use? You have to start with some sort of standard. So what else would you use? And this is coming from people who study economics. But if that's an issue for the board, we can move away from that. But in the spirit of transparency, I do think we have to be prepared for a utility board or the city in a couple of years to come back and say, we're going to have to raise the rates next year by 5% or 7% or 10%. So the benefit of locking in something at 1.5% is to avoid that. But that might be, if that came back, that might be where we just have to tighten our belts even more. I
think that's true, and
I
we
just
are
want that
gonna-
out there.
Yeah, we are going to review it annually, so it's not going to be, we're going to be caught off guard. Is, I think, what you
Even
all are trying
annually.
to get at.
I
That's
mean,
right,
with
our
CPI went
citizens.
from 1 or 2%, I think, last year. Now it's up to 7% this year, and it's all based on inflation. Our cost for everything increased. So I mean, it could potentially happen.
Madam Mayor, I came this close to getting a degree in economics, and the best thing for power is the producer price index, the PPI. CPI, I don't know what previous administration was thinking, but that never should have been brought into the, simply because of what we're talking about now, the sudden jump, and then it'll go down, but it's going to take a long time to go down. So the PPI is much more akin to something like this.
Okay, so I think that may be something that would come from your utility.
The utility
rate.
board,
Okay.
yeah.
So, all right, we have a motion and we have a second. This is going to be the amendment that was proposed. This is Ordinance 21-23, placing it on its third reading, suspending the rules, and reading title only as amended.
Roll call.
Do you have all of that, Renee?
I got a
You've
record.
okay.
I got a recording.
Okay. Roll call.
Wiley.
First. I'm going to vote yes.
Burns.
Yes.
Hunt.
Yes.
Chrysler.
Yes.
Allen.
Yes.
Sappington.
Yes.
Motion is approved for ordinance 21-23. We need a motion now to approve. No?
Philip needs to read it.
Oh, Philip needs to read it. Sorry, Philip.
Read it. Glad I don't have to read the whole ordinance. Ordinance number 21-23, an ordinance adjusting scheduled utility rate increases for years 2022 through 2026.
Thank you. And you will get with Jay and you'll
We will amend
the amended ordinance.
those 4 sections to read basically no rate increase will occur for 2022, and for years 2023 through 2026 the board shall annually review rates using the information contained in the 2021 rate study as a guide.
That's not what I said
Okay.
the motion was. I said the motion was to amend the ordinance to have no automatic rate increases for 2022 through 2026. So that has to be the first thing, is no automatic rate increases for those 5 years. But then, with 23, you consider raising the rates based upon the recommendations of the rate study. So it's getting rid of the automatic rate increases, not just for the first year, but for the full 5 years.
Director Allen, would it be permissible if your language, and I apologize, I was assuming that that language would completely replace the language that's currently in those sections of code, so there would be no reference at all to any automatic rate increases. But we can add that, that's not a problem.
It's right there on letter E is why.
Yes, well, I was looking at the code
Only
language.
word that I added that you didn't add was automatic.
Yes, sir, understand.
So that we understand as a board that is what you all have just passed.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
They all intertwine. It serves the same purpose. I'm glad we all acknowledged one of the board goals, and I just wish citizens would understand this has been happening over several years. I think Director Allen, it's fantastic, and we will have some sort of review. I too hope that that we all vote for a utility board, that it works for us. And I hope that helps us going into the future. I mean, I sincerely do. So I think it's a win-win. It's a positive. Over the last 3 readings, it's been a little interesting. But I've said it before. Each one of us are here with intent and purpose, and we're going to agree to disagree. But at the end of the day, we will come to a decision, and I'm going to support that decision. Leaving this room right here. I support you guys.
Thank you, Brad. So now I need a motion to adopt ordinance 21-23 as amended.
So
moved.
Second, whatever.
We have a motion and a second. Brad made the motion. Carol made the second. Roll call.
Burns.
Yes.
Hunt.
Yes.
Chrysler.
Yes.
Allen.
Yes.
Sappington.
Yes.
Smiley.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Ordinance 21-23 is adopted.
Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much.
Before you leave, I want to say thank you to the citizens that spoke up. It is hard to come to these board meetings, and it is hard to stand in front of us and give your opinion. You feel like you're going to be judged, but you're not. And I appreciate the emails and the communication. And anytime you have any questions on any agenda item, as you can see, it makes a difference if you communicate.
Thank you.
Thank you, all of you, for showing up.
Thank you.
Next is ordinance 21-25, first and only reading, waive competitive bidding for health insurance network and administration, Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Wait,
Madam Mayor?
that's 24.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
We certainly did. My
Wishful
fault. Let's
thinking.
go back to ordinance 21-24. This will be the second reading for ward reapportionment plan. Philip?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As previously stated, based on the census numbers, the city needs to reapportion the 4 wards. Staff did not have any input into the drawing of the proposed wards. We asked the Northwest Regional Planning Commission, as they have done in the past for the city, to look at the census blocks and try to get to those numbers being within a reasonable percentage of one another. As stated in the memo, there was greater than, I think, 10% of population based on the current wards. And based on the plan that you have in front of you as proposed, Plan 1, there's there's the least deviation between wards 1 and 3. I think it's 7% versus Plan 2 was 9%. So with that, staff recommends the adoption, at least the second reading of the ordinance, adopting Plan 1 for wards for the next 10 years.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the public that would like to make a comment on this ordinance? There being none, directors?
Madam Mayor.
I was just wondering if we can put both of them on the, can we place both
Yes.
the second and third reading tonight?
Would you
Go
like
ahead
to
and
make
vote.
a motion to
Is that
place
what you were going
ordinance
to say,
21?
Brad? You can probably say it better than I can. Go ahead.
Do an excellent job, Director Hunt.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So you want to make,
I want to place the ordinance on its second and third readings tonight.
so we're going to place ordinance 21-24 on its second and third reading, suspending the rules and reading title only. That is your motion.
That is my motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Got that?
Who's the second?
Second is Lisa.
Thank you.
Roll call.
Hunt.
Yes.
Rissler.
Yes.
Allen.
Yes.
Sappington.
Yes.
Smiley.
Yes.
Burns.
Yes.
Philip?
Ordinance number 21-24, an ordinance reapportioning city wards.
Do I have a motion to adopt ordinance 21-24?
So moved.
Second.
We have Marla made the second. First was Carol. Roll call.
Rissler.
Yes.
Allen.
Yes.
Sappington.
Yes.
Smiley.
Yes.
Burns.
Yes.
Hunt.
Yes.
Ordinance 21-24 is adopted. Next is ordinance 21-25, first and only reading, waive competitive bidding, health insurance network and administration, Blue Cross Blue Shield. Christina.
Mayor, members of the board, Christina Patricius, Finance Director. In the past 5 years, the city has used Blue Cross, United Healthcare, and Cigna, and changes to the low-cost provider each year cause significant disruption in the healthcare services for employees. Last year, the city moved to self-funding for our healthcare, which allows us to provide consistent year-to-year healthcare coverage. And we do this by renting the Blue Cross Blue Shield network and paying them for their administrative services. It also allows the city to keep costs lower overall. Staff is requesting to continue with Blue Cross as a sole source with total costs not to exceed $171,000.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to make a comment on ordinance 21-25? There is not. Directors?
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
I feel the need to abstain from this because I am on city insurance. As a retired employee, I pay a full amount, but I don't want to vote yea or nay on this, please.
Thank you, Brad. Anyone else? There being none, then do I have a motion to adopt to place ordinance 21-25 on its first and only reading, suspending the rules and reading title only?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Got it?
I hear them both at the same time. I can't tell who's who.
Okay.
I
I
know
know
you
who
did it.
did one. I don't know what
Did
it
one.
was.
Well, Mindy
Carol
did-
made the motion, I seconded.
Mindy made the second.
Sorry.
That's fine.
You're fine.
Roll call.
Allen,
Yes.
Sappington,
Yes.
Smiley,
Yes.
Burns,
Abstain.
Hunt,
Yes.
Rissler.
Yes.
I meant to say, I think they're a great insurance company, and we're gonna be pleased. And I appreciate what HR and finance did to get this.
I did want to ask, have we not used them before for self-funding health insurance?
Let's, Philip, go ahead and read.
Ordinance number 21-25, an ordinance authorizing an agreement with Blue Cross and Blue Shield and the city, waiving the requirement of competitive bidding.
Thank you. You have a question, Carol,
Have
before
we
we?
used them before for self-funding?
We currently use them.
That's what I thought.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to adopt ordinance 21-25?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Sappington,
Yes.
Smiley,
Yes.
Burns,
Abstain.
Hunt,
Yes.
Rissler,
Yes.
Allen.
Yes.
Ordinance 21-25 is adopted. Next is our staff reports. Purchasing regulations review continued. Christina?
So at the last meeting, two specific concerns were brought up, and I have just lost power. So basically two concerns were brought up specific to cooperative purchasing. With regard to that, I would say that, first of all, the state bid is set up by the state for use by state and local procurement units, of which local governments are one. And there is nothing in the language in the code that was provided that indicates that this is for extraordinary or unusual circumstance use. In addition to that, all of the other co-ops that we have been using as staff have all been approved by the board, and we've listed the dates that they were approved, or the years that we have approved them in the memo that was provided to you. With regard to renovations and basically small construction projects, the city acting as a contractor to get those projects done does not violate the purchasing code. Every individual item that is needed from a subcontractor, if it exceeds our purchasing authority, is bid out. So by acting as a subcontractor, a lot of times we actually save the city money because we're not paying for the subcontractor. So staff is available for further questions.
Thank you. Directors, any questions of Christina? Very good. Thank you very much. Appreciate that information. Next is our Arkansas 911 Board Public Safety Answering Point Consolidation. Philip?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In 2019, the state legislature adopted a new law that replaced the Arkansas Telephone Emergency Services Board with a Arkansas 911 Board. And that act required the 911 Board to develop a plan by January 2022 to provide funding for a limited number of what's referred to as PSAPs, Public Safety Answering Points, which are basically 911 call centers that are funded by the state through the fees that we all pay on our cell phone and on our landlines. That act limited the number of PSAPs to 77 in the state. There are 75 counties in the state. We originally believed that the idea was that every county would have one, with the exception of Little Rock, North Little Rock, and they would each get their own. However, the act did allow the 911 board, subject to a 3/4 vote, to increase the number of PSAPs, and the 911 board has done that to increase them to 79. Based on the 911 Board's study of consolidating PSAPs in the state, they are recommending, or at least the study recommended, one PSAP for each of the state's 75 counties, one additional PSAP in Benton and Washington counties, and 2 additional PSAPs in Pulaski County. So 75 plus 1 in Benton, 1 in Washington, 2 in Pulaski. That would get us to the total number of 79. That original study by the 911 Board recommended 2 PSAPs in Benton County. There are currently 4. Benton County, Bentonville, Rogers, and Siloam Springs. And that recommendation of 2 would be that only 2 PSAPs would receive funding from the state. And the original recommendation was Benton County and a consolidated Siloam Springs, Rogers, and Bentonville. But the study also said that due to the growth in Benton County, the 911 Board might want to consider 3. And it referenced originally a consolidation of Siloam Springs with Bentonville or Siloam Springs with Rogers. Since that time, that page in the 911 consolidation plan has been changed to not make a reference to who should consolidate with who, but only that they recommend 2 PSAPs in Benton County, and the 911 Board might consider 3 based on growth. The issue is that any entity that wants to remain or have more PSAPs than what's in the recommendation plan, the consolidation plan recommended to the 911 Board, we have until April 1st of this year to provide justifications of why we should have a state-funded PSAP. And in order for things to go forward, the idea is that a consolidation plan has to be submitted to the board by the end of 2022, and consolidation has to occur by the end of 2024, beginning of 2025. If you consolidate and you have a consolidation plan, you will continue to receive funding through 2024, but it would end January 1, 2025. If you decide not to consolidate, then the state funding would end at the end of 2022. Beginning in 2023, you wouldn't receive any state funding. Our 911 call center, currently in the 2022 budget, we have budgeted to receive, I think, $240,000 from the state through the 911 fees. It cost us about $650,000 a year to operate the 911. We recently met with the 4 jurisdictions that operate PSAPs in Benton County, and we met with the executive director of the 911 Board and the chairperson of the 911 Board to express our concerns. And part of those concerns were the fact that the 911 Board and the plan proposes to consolidate first and then develop standards for the operation of 911 PSAPs. And there's an argument that it's the cart before the horse, that standards should be developed first, because not a guarantee that all counties are going to be able to meet those standards. You don't have to make a decision tonight, but you will likely have to make a decision at some point in 2022 of whether or not, if the 911 Board does not allow 4 PSAPs in the county, which is probably unlikely, if they allow 3, it's going to be incumbent upon Siloam Springs, Rogers, and Bentonville, and Benton County for that matter, to determine who's going to consolidate. If at some point you choose to consolidate, then that's one issue, a decision that you'll have to make. If you choose not to consolidate, I mean, that's going to be a question at some point if we only have 3 PSAPs. If we don't consolidate, then we can still run our 911 center, but we'll do so without the state funding. at one time, the 911 board was indicating to us that they were not going to allow 911 call centers that are unfunded to operate, that they would move those 911 calls to a funded PSAP. They have since changed that thought process, and I believe they will allow a unfunded state 911 call center, a PSAP, to operate. But if you don't consolidate, you're likely not to get state funding. Now, the plan for the 4 PSAPs in Benton County, we're still planning to meet and discuss how we think we should move forward collectively before the 911 board. And likely we would go to them and say, we think we should have 4, and here's why. And we'll come up with the justifications for that. I can't promise you that the 911 board will agree to that. So at some point, after April 1st, the 911 board is going to make their decision, and then after that, we'll likely be back in front of you asking you to make a tough decision one way or the other. So I just want to update you on it. Regardless, we'll continue to receive the 911 fees through 2022, but after that, depending on what's decided, that remains up in the air, if that makes sense. It's a very complicated issue. The issue, I think, at the state level is issue related to efficiency, redundancy, where we are operating multiple 911 call centers, the experience of the 911 caller, and the problems in certain areas where transfers occur. There's always going to be transfers at times. We transfer calls to Benton County and maybe to Washington County at times. We don't transfer calls between cities. So it's an attempt to consolidate 911 funded, state-funded 911 call centers. It's just a question of what's the right issue for us in Benton County, and we'll continue to work on it, but I wanted to update the board on that, and I'm happy to try to answer any questions.
Yes, Lisa.
So you'll give us what is the state funding numbers and what do we currently use the fees on now?
We budgeted in 2022 for $240,000, and that goes to offset the cost of operating the 911 call center here in Siloam Springs, which cost us about $600,000 total for equipment and the dispatcher's salary, and it may be $650,000, don't hold me to that exact number, but $600,000 plus to operate that. So currently today, what the state will do once it's all been decided, they will determine based on population, I think, how much money goes into what county, okay? And then, you know, if there's 2 call centers, PSAPs in the county, they will, you know, split that somehow, some way based on calls or based on how much the population or something along those lines.
How does that affect us? Like, if I was to call 911, if we were merged with, it makes sense that Rogers and Bentonville would merge, to
One
me.
would think, yes.
I mean, because they're locally right there together, but if we were to merge with one of them, how does that affect us calling 911?
Your call, if we merged, your 911 call would be answered by dispatchers in either Rogers or Bentonville.
But do they dispatch local police officers
Yes.
immediately?
Yes, they would. They would then dispatch fire and police and EMS.
Anyone else?
Philip, forgive me, I had
That's
to leave
okay.
for a moment, but we do not have a 911 in Siloam now, or we do?
We do have a state-funded 911 called a PSAP, Public Safety Answering Point.
Because a few years ago, it was going around town, we had eliminated it.
No, sir, we never eliminated it.
It never eliminated at all?
At one time, in 2019, I believe it was, we had staffing issues, and we had to flip it to Benton County to answer until we could get our staffing up to enough detail to be able to manage.
That's how
24.
rumors changed, because we, at the time, it was exactly 2019 to what you're talking about. The rumor was we had just shut ours down completely and given it to Benton County.
No.
So I'm glad to hear we got our own. We just need to make sure that between the city and the county that we don't have one, like the city saying, well, that's the car you're telling us to go is going into the county. Well, they're not there for another mile. So, you know, that's the only thing I've experienced. So, okay, that was all I had. Thank you. I appreciate it.
The issue that I heard that started this was a situation that had a couple of, possibly 3 transfers between 911 call centers. And that's why the state decided to look at it. I mean, currently today, there's over 100 state-funded PSAPs, 75 counties, over 100 PSAPs that are being funded. So the state legislature decided that it was better to try to consolidate some of those. And in some cases, I think it makes perfect sense. I'm not sure it makes perfect sense for everybody.
All right.
So it's just an update, and we're working with Benton County, Bentonville, and Rogers, and we're trying to develop a plan to go to the 911 board, hopefully together, with a proposal and see what they say.
The smaller cities north of us, they would go to Benton County, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
There is one call center that I'm aware of in Benton County that is not funded. That's Bella Vista. I think their calls go to Benton County. They're transferred to dispatchers in Bella Vista during the day, and after night, Benton County dispatches. If that's Chief is saying yes, that's correct.
Anyone else? If not, then Philip, the financials and your administrator's report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You have the October financials in front of you. As always, feel free to contact Christina or I if you have questions. I have a number of expenditures to report, all in the electrical department. It's becoming a little bit more difficult to obtain electrical equipment. The $45,099 was a purchase of 300 AMI meters for inventory and for new customers. $37,926 was spent on 2 1,500 kilovolt 3-phase pad-mounted transformers for inventory and customers. $33,500 spent on one 2,500 kilovolt 3-phase pad-mounted transformer. $48,630 on 30 one-phase, single-phase pad-mounted transformers. And then $50,172.50 on 17,500 feet of 4/0 primary wire for inventory. All this is related to the growth and being able to have wire, electrical wire and transformers for those new subdivisions. And the airport spent $31,000, $31,200 on airplane fuel. As always, my COVID update has some information per the Arkansas Center for Health Improvement, but not a lot because testing is down. But as you can see on the attachment, the number of active cases per 1,000 individuals in Benton County and Washington County have increased from November 7th to December 5th. From Benton County, went from 1.83 to 2.55 cases, and Washington County from 1.33 to 2.1. The Northwest Arkansas Council is also putting out information specific to Northwest Arkansas, and these numbers are from November 16th to December 3rd. The number of new COVID cases reported in Benton County increased from 61 to 112, and Washington from 49 to 88. The number of COVID patients in Northwest Arkansas hospitals increased from 39 to 50, and the number on ventilators actually decreased from 36 to 33. And the percent of eligible population that is fully immunized increased in Benton County from basically the middle of November to December from 48.1% to 49.5%, and in Washington County is 49.8 to 51.1. COVID is still with us, and I would encourage everybody to continue to wear your mask where possible and keep your distance and sanitize your hands and wash your hands on a regular basis. There were some comments previously at previous board meetings about concerns on utility bills. I met with staff to review how they verify that the software calculation is accurate, and every time every time the meters are read, staff, the billing supervisor in UB, will take a sampling of bills from the various rate classes and hand run those calculations to compare it to the software to verify that that calculation is correct. And if there are large unexpected changes, then we send it back to the meter reader to verify and confirm that the meter was read correctly. There are, a range of increases and decreases within expected range that are not sent back to be reread. During this time that the residents expressed some concerns about their bills, we had complaints that we did some research on. There were 2 customers that didn't have 12 months worth of history. Their utility bills had doubled from prior months during the hottest months. We had some customers that we went back and looked at, and they had similar usage in those same months previous in the prior year. One customer had purchased a second roll-off, so their bill was greater than it was a year ago. And in one case, there was a difference of $22, all based on the power cost adjustment. A year ago, it was a negative, it was a credit, $11. And this time this year, it was a charge of $11, so it was a $22 swing. As many of you know, the power cost adjustment is partially passed through to the residents. Our electrical rates include, I believe, 2.3 cents for a power cost adjustment. If the power cost adjustment, that is, that changes monthly, it fluctuates monthly. If it's less than 2.3 cents, customers get a credit. If it's greater than 2.3 cents, that additional amount is passed through. I would like to encourage that anyone who has a concern about their utility bill to please call the utility billing office at 479-524-5136, extension 1. If the usage is large and unexpected, we'll be happy to reread the meter, and if necessary, we can verify that the meter is working correctly. I would point out that per city code, there is a $25 fee to test electrical meters. If it is found to be defective, that $25 is credited back to the customer. And then last, Madam Mayor, city offices will be closed Thursday and Friday, December 23rd and 24th for Christmas, and also on December 31st for the New Year's holiday. Thank you.
Thank you. So, at this time, we'll move into our director's reports. I'm sorry, Renee?
I need to let the board know that the meeting minutes from November 2nd were changed after you voted on them at the last meeting on item L. Director Rissler wasn't here for the November 2nd meeting, and I had that as a 6-1 vote, and it should have been 5-1, so I did change that in the minutes.
Thank you, Renee. So before I move to the directors, I have a couple of things that I would like to say. First of all, I want to thank everyone who attended our Light Up Siloam Springs and was here to enjoy our parade. It was great. I've heard nothing but positive comments. Thank you to the Heritage League for heading that up and seeing that we have a great parade every year. Seems like it gets bigger and better. So thank you, and thank you to all the staff that helped make that happen. If we didn't have our dedicated staff that we have, we wouldn't have Light Up Siloam. So thank you all very much for the extra time and effort that you put forth, and that's every department. So thank you. The other is I want to thank the fire department for allowing me to attend their awards ceremony the other night. It was great to see us rewarding and recognizing the men and women who do such a great job for our city and our department. So thank you all for allowing me to be there. I think that is, oh, I did want to say that I did receive a notice from Cox Communications that effective January 6th of 22, they will be increasing the rates of some of their services to reflect the increased cost of doing business, particularly the rising cost of TV programming. So I want to make everyone aware that that has been given us as a notice. I'm sure that anyone that has Cox services will be seeing that or getting notice of that, but that will be coming. The other is that we have talked a lot about a traffic light being placed at the intersection of 412 and Airport Road. We did receive a letter from RDOT that said reference is made to a recent contact from Justin Bland, our city engineer, to Mr. Ben Kerwood of District 9 Permit Officer, requesting a traffic operations review at the intersection of 412 and Airport Road. Our review consisted of 24-hour turning movement counts, a review of crash records, and an on-site investigation. Based on the results of the review, traffic volumes at the intersection of Highway 412 and Airport Road are insufficient to meet the warrants for signalization as outlined in the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. So that is our latest reply from RDOT concerning a traffic light at that. I wanted you all to be aware that we had received that. And with that, I will start with Mindy. We'll end with David. So, Mindy.
Okay. I took enough time when I was reading my statement that I had been preparing for the utility rate study, so I won't take much more time. I do thank the citizens who reached out by phone call, email, social media. I know some of us on the board don't pay attention to social media, and some of us pay more attention to it. I do find helpful information, and I did see a lot of comments that were very helpful in helping me make my decision, or at least have things to take into consideration with the decision that we made tonight. I hope that citizens do see, whether they watched it earlier or hear about it, I hope they see that this was an example of the board listening to the citizens, taking concerns into consideration, and then making a decision that we feel is in the best interest and will be helpful to the citizens, as well as meet or address some of the concerns that they had. As others have implied tonight, it's not, we make difficult decisions, and this was a difficult one. And we don't take these decisions lightly. We do want to hear from you. I think every one of us on this board, as has also been said, and so I know it's true, we do care. We do want to hear from you, and we do want to know what your needs are and how we can meet those needs. One thing I do want to remind everybody of, the second annual decorating contest, Deck the Halls, is going on right now. This year they're doing it a little bit differently, and that is there's going to be one winner from each ward that will get a prize of $75, and then the judges are going to decide on one winner from the four wards to get an overall winner for an additional $75. The winners are going to be announced on Tuesday, December 21st. And I believe there will be a map again this year that will show the addresses of the participants. So if you have not entered, please do so. And if you have not started looking at lights around town, please do that. I actually went out to Stonecrest about a week ago, and they're already decorating quite a bit out there. It's pretty cool. So get going with those decorations.
Thank you, Mindy. Brad?
Careful turning into Stonecrest.
Not turning in, this is probably turning out.
Today is the 80th anniversary of Pearl Harbor, and I mention that because we've lost over the past years some really great local World War II citizens, that some have fought in the Pacific, some in the European theater, and if you get a chance, and they're still kicking, interesting folks to talk to. So I just want to remember that. And I had some lighting issues in Ward 2, and I know Director Hunt had some in what will now next year will be my ward. And I sent a text to the city administrator, and it was close to a weekend. I sent some pictures. Director Hunt also had her citizens send an email with pictures. Those were very helpful. And by Monday morning, they were addressed, or Monday evening, they were addressed. They fixed them. And I just really appreciate that. And along with that, about 7 in the morning, we had a transformer issue. And I know it was 7. I was walking the dog, and the electric department was there addressing it. We heard the noise. So city staff's doing a great job. I appreciate it. The December 3rd memos we get from Holland, where are they on the city website? Or am I just incompetent? Can we get them out, that memo out? And I'm not a senior. I might be a senior citizen. I qualify. But it's just easy if they pull up the front page, and if somewhere it pops, because we just had a ton of good pictures and information, and it was concerning about methamphetamine and some other things, but that would just be easy. I have some 7-year-old human beings that just want something they can grab, and they like pictures, so it's good stuff if we can get it out there. The Sager Creek Advisory Committee will meet tomorrow. We had a little kickoff. This is the first time we're going to meet together. Mr. Anglin and I had a conversation about that. One of his complaints were we've had a lot of advisory committees, and we spent a lot of money, and we have. We've spent $20,000 here, $32,000 here, and we've never done anything with them. My promise to Mr. Anglin is that this is the committee that we are going to get it done. And we're going to make it safe, get it back to be a quality of life, a focal point, and a revenue generator. I told him I don't get involved in a committee, even though I was kind of indirectly elected to be on that, but I thank you because I am passionate about it. And I'm very excited to see what that holds for us in the future, and as we produce something and bring that to the board to implement that. The Christmas parade, it's just hard to really put in words. As a person that drove a vehicle that pulled a float, the time I had to kill for the joy that I finally received at the end. But as we all hung out together and looked at floats, the energy was, it was just good stuff. That's Siloam. That's just Siloam. Memorial Park, Chautauqua Amphitheater, stepping up our game on some of the lighting. And we've got great weather coming up this weekend. Take time in the evening and take a walkabout. We did a good job this year, and I just feel like we're going to get better and better. And we've got people from the corridor coming to us just like we go to them. So I thank you for that. And on that note, I am done.
Thank you, Brad. Marla?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I want to share some information about the utility assistance that's being offered right now. It's called LIHEAP, and it's government funded, LIHEAP. I have the applications at the Manny Center. If you are interested in that, drop by. We'll get you an application. We'll show you where it needs to be sent. There's 3 different ways to send it in. But they do help with utilities, and this is the winter assistance. Money goes quick. You can call the Manny Center, and we can give you the phone number to the office in Rogers that you have to take your application to, or we can go ahead and fax it in for you once you get it filled out. But it's pretty thorough, and it's a good program, and they hardly ever turn anybody down. So just check with us at the Manny Center, and we can get that for you. Also, I had some of my volunteers, they asked me, like, you have a meeting tonight, would you say this? They like the new improvements on Holly Street, but as you're going north, when you turn right onto Tulsa, it's hard to distinguish the turn from the curb. And I said, okay. I will remember that. And instead of me putting it on report a problem, I wanted to say it personally to you because it was very important to them.
Turning right.
If you turn, if you're going north on Holly and you turn right on Tulsa, where we did the new improvements, the crosswalk area there, yeah, it's hard to tell the curb from the road. And us old people need color designation. So I just want to say I'm very blessed to be able to live in Siloam, and everything that's going on now is so important to make memories with your families and to remember to do what's right and what your parents taught you. And no matter what age you are, you still need to know right or wrong and follow your heart. And just God bless everybody, and I hope everybody stays safe from the COVID that's starting up again.
Thank you, Marla. Lisa?
Here. I have a couple questions before I get to mine. On the RDOT for the 412 and the airport road, I know a lot of us have received phone calls from citizens. And what you read off, they're going to ask, what's the next step?
I don't, Philip, can you give us some direction?
You had to ask that question.
But we're going to be asked.
The city engineer left, so I'll do my best. There's no next step. The warrants, the uniform manual on uniform traffic, MUTCD, requires certain turning movements and certain numbers of turning movements and pass-through traffic in order to be able to have the warrants met to justify a traffic signal. So as was discussed in front of this board, and I'm not sure if you were at that meeting or not, but when when this board was considering the subdivision south of Stonecrest, Hillcrest, I believe the name of it was, there was a lot of discussion about that. And the only way to get to that point is more traffic. It's a really, I hate to be the bearer or the bearer of bad news, but in order to get to that point where a traffic signal is warranted, there's got to be more traffic, more turning movements for RDOT engineers to say, yes, there's a traffic needed. Or, I mean, that's really the only answer I have for you.
And they make a decision off just traffic movement. It doesn't have to be just accidents. I hate the thought of
I know more
that we have to have that variable in there to
I don't want to say
decide.
that one. I didn't want to say that one. There's a number of various warrants. I've been able to make cases in times past where the amount of pedestrians were considered in the warrants. There's not really any pedestrians there. So in that particular case, it is really vehicles and how many are turning in any given direction in a 24-hour period. And any time that you're dealing with a state highway, their engineers are going to base everything on traffic warrants. There also accident data will be taken into account, but the main driver is going to be traffic.
And they did say in this letter a review of crash records.
I know.
And on-site
I heard you say
investigation,
that, and I
so,
thought,
yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
I hate to think that that's what has to happen for us to get it done. Another question I had, and I should have asked this earlier, but I didn't get the question earlier. On that Jiffy on the corner by Atwood, where we're putting that gas station in, when you come off of 412 into the gas station, is that going to be a right turn only?
When you come
out of there, I think.
Out of there, I don't believe it's a right turn only. I believe
okay,
it's
you'll be able to cross over.
I believe so. I think if it was me, I would probably go out to exit out onto 59 if I was going to go east. But I don't think RDOT required, or we have, I don't think it's a right turn only.
Okay, that was just a question. I want to apologize to the fire department for not attending, but I appreciate our fire department for everything they do, our police department, every department, but I really appreciate the fire department, and I apologize that I wasn't there. I was building a float, and I had tape all over me and glitter and everything else, so I apologize. If I went to promise my 5-year-old She's turned 5. That would be in the parade. I would have been there. On the utility board, the clarification I want to make is that I hope that we get to select who's on the, what I meant by the board having input is I'd like the board to get to select who's on that committee. And so, on September 11th, 2021, we had a prayer meeting outside City Hall. And I was surprised. We had 78 participants. I put it together in like 2 weeks. And after the meeting, I had a lot of people contact me and say, hey, why do we not do this more often? Not just on September 11th. And so I contacted the churches to see if there's any interest, to see if anybody wants to do a community prayer. It's a non-denominational community prayer, getting together, just praying for our community. There's a lot of needs in our community. And so we met at the Chamber of Commerce, and we're going to have our first community non-denominational prayer on January 1st at 9 a.m. at the Chamber of Commerce. And it's just to pray for our community and the needs in our community. Like somebody brought up, there's a lot of need on what's up, on rental assistance, utility assistance. And I know Marla sees tons of people through the Manna Center that just have desperate needs. And so we're going to meet at the Chamber, like I said, Chamber of Commerce, 9 a.m., January 1st, and have a community prayer. And everybody's welcome to attend. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Carol?
Well, that's disappointing news on 412 and Airport Road.
Mm-hmm.
That, I hate to hear that. I wanted to thank Simmons for I think it's a UTV that they've donated to the city for the police department and the fire department. I want to thank the Heritage League they do the Breakfast with Santa, which is a really fun thing for the children. I used to take my grandchildren there. And also for the parade. The parade has a special meaning for me, and I think it does for a lot of citizens in Siloam Springs, because there's not a lot of towns that do those little parades anymore. But we'd only lived here a week when that parade participated. And it was a surprise because we did not know Siloam did that. And we just happened to be driving downtown and couldn't get through and realized that there was a parade, and we stopped. And it was just a really heartwarming feeling for us when we sat there and watched the parade. And I did attend the award ceremony for the firemen, and I wanted to congratulate all those who were recognized at the awards ceremony. And I want to thank everybody that contacted me about the utility rates. I think it's important that we hear from our citizens. I'm not really one on social media, but I really like to get those emails. And I think it's great that you take time out of your day to express your opinion to the board. And that is all I have. I think I've spent enough time tonight.
Thank you, Carol. David?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to echo to our thanks to the Heritage League. I think there was quite a pent-up demand from not having it last year, and it was greatly attended. And it was a great parade, a lot of floats. And I just got to say thank you to Mr. Santa, Kevin Williams, for being out there. Oh, sorry, any kids watching, it's not really Kevin. It was really Santa. But it is disappointing on the airport road. I had no doubt they were going to deny. It's been talked about Washington Street and 412 as well because of the dangerousness, and it's never going to happen. But, you know, we can certainly ask again down the road after this addition gets put in. I want to thank the citizens who attended the last 3 meetings on the rate increase, as well as the emails and the calls. I echo what Brad said on the Holland newsletter. I think what she sends us is fantastic, and it really educates me, and I think it would be great to put on the website as well, simply to let the citizens know. Not enough of the citizens know what the city employees are involved in, and I mean, she does color pictures, and it's really self-explanatory, and I think it would be great to have it on the website as well. I wanted to stress to our city staff to please reach out please meet. Jonathan Barnett has a plan to fix the entire problem at Don Hill using county and state funds, no cost to the city, new customers that would come on and be new customers for the city. And he's telling me he can't even get anybody to return a phone call. And I would just like us to sit down, and I'm just saying, if we can get other people to pay for it, the county or the state, and he's saying ADEQ's all behind it, then let's think about it. Because if it's free customers for us down the road, then I'd just like us to talk. Nothing it hurts from just having a talk. Marla, regarding measuring the sewer, you mentioned you never have understood that. It's per flush. I'm sorry, hon, if you've never understood that, it's per flush. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. I hope you had a happy Thanksgiving and Merry Christmas, even though we'll be here before Christmas. Merry Christmas. And that's all I got. Thank you.
You have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Marla. I'm sorry, by Mindy.
One of the M's.
Close enough.
Madam Mayor, may I say one thing?
Yes, you may.
As it relates to 412 and Airport Road, one of the other things we did, staff had originally asked RDOT to consider reducing the speed further east on 412. And they came back and said, no, we don't think it's the appropriate thing to do. The 85th percentile is, whatever it is, the speed is. We turned around and put drafted a letter for the mayor to sign and send to RDOT, which hopefully has a little bit more oomph than city staff. So we're still waiting. We haven't heard back from that. But Lisa, to your question about what else can we do, it doesn't have to do with the traffic signal, but the idea of trying to say we still need the speed limit to be reduced as you're coming up the hill, not at the top of the hill. I'm sorry I didn't think about that earlier. Apologize.
Oh, that's great.
Thank you, Phillips. All those in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. We are adjourned. Thank you.